What is compulsive repetition? Chaplin has a movie called Modern Times. There is a very interesting set of shots in Modern Times where he opens the door every day and a piece of wood falls down from the door and hits him on the head, which is very funny. Then what is the next plot? One day when he opened the door, the wood did not fall down. Then Chaplin walked into the room and suddenly felt something was wrong. So he stepped back and opened the door hard, hitting his head. Chaplin said, "That's right now." This is called compulsive repetition. When bad things keep happening, it would be wrong if they didn't happen, and you wouldn't be yourself if they didn't happen. Well, Chaplin's was definitely a performance, right? So I often hope that everyone can remind themselves of a few words. This sentence is a sentence to ask yourself in a depressed mood, which is called "You are like this again." It seems like you are falling into the same patterns once again. Many of the hardships and mistakes we face tend to repeat themselves time and time again. This can greatly impact our relationships, careers, and even our business ventures as we find ourselves stuck in a cycle of repetition. Scientists call this phenomenon compulsive repetition. However, in order to break free from this cycle, we must first acknowledge its presence and catch it as early as possible. By doing so, we can begin to unravel the root causes of our repeated mistakes and move forward towards a brighter future. You have to recognize that if you are completely unaware of it, if you don't even understand the term compulsive repetition or have never heard of it, you will definitely not realize that you have compulsive repetition. Only when you realize that you always do this, or why do you always quarrel with your partner, or why every child of mine leaves you in the end, you have a chance to change. This is the first step. The second step is to refuse to repeat the same pattern. I think it is very important to find the temptation of impulse and not give in to it. This book lists the types of impulse temptations that a person may have. I will read it to you and you can compare yourself. Are you always worried about being abandoned? The first question is, are you always worried about alienating others? Some react angrily to dependency due to past experiences. Do you worry about low energy levels? Are you always worried about emptiness? Are you always worried about entanglement? Are you always worried about helplessness? Are you always worried about low self-esteem? Are you always worried about being dependent on others? Are you always worried that you have no power? Do you worry about being rejected? Do you worry about being a yes man? Do you worry about being taken advantage of? Do you worry about being weak? Do you worry about being insignificant? I think it's okay for each of us to have a little bit of worry, but if you make it a point where you are always worrying about it, it will lead to compulsive repetition. For example, if you are weak and incompetent, almost all domestic violence comes from the person who is always worried about being weak and incompetent. Because we have made a series of programs about domestic violence, the husband will feel that he is the one being bullied, and you always look down on him. The reason is that they are always worried that they are showing weakness and incompetence. So if these things that you are always worried about become intensified, become extreme, and become something that bothers you, they will compensate in your behavior. So when we identify compulsive repetition, and you can face yourself sincerely in your heart, find out what you are afraid of, then don't succumb to this thing. The next time you hesitate to do something and worry that others might perceive you as timid, don't give up. Remember that there is nothing wrong with being a little timid, and it doesn't define who you are as a person. It's okay to feel timid in certain situations and confident in others. What truly matters is whether the action you're considering is right or not how others will judge you for it. Don't let your inner fears and doubts control your actions. Instead, take ownership of your feelings and choose to act in a way that aligns with your values and beliefs. That compulsive repetition you had before all comes from your emotions being determined by external opinions. It's the tribal effect, right? How people in your tribe or other tribes see you causes you to compulsively repeat those things. But if you can exclude irrelevant emotions, there are no superfluous emotions. But in our lives, many people have superfluous emotions. That is, after dealing with things, I have to scold you and vent my temper. right? So we can eliminate superfluous emotions and heal our emotional trauma. That is, when you realize that there is such trauma in your subconscious mind, you can find a psychologist or a friend or read books to heal it. The fourth method is to add more routines. Didn't you have the same routine before? Your previous routine was, I don't want it anymore, right? Or, let's break up, right? It's not good to always have the same routine. You should have more routines in your life, right? So, for example, change your self-image. I'm not that kind of person, right? I'm a different kind of person. I'm now very sunny, and then make a clear plan to deal with similar things. If you don't have a plan, you can easily fall back into your old ways. But if you can have a plan, it's much better. The fifth thing to be aware of is the most relaxed moments. Why is it easy to say unpleasant things at home? Do you know? We are all polite outside, but once we get home, we say unpleasant things, right? Too relaxed. When you get home and relax too much, you completely ignore yourself. So the wounds in your heart and the unscrupulous behavior of your subconscious mind in your early years are all because you relax too much. So if we can be alert to the moments of relaxation, make plans, and add a few new routines to ourselves, we can break the compulsive repetition. Life is short, and your life really goes by in a flash. And if you can't recognize compulsive repetition, you can only live one kind of life in your life. If you can recognize it, you may be like this for the first 10 years, like this for the next 10 years, and like this for the next 10 years. Your life can change, and your realm will become different, so people must keep changing.